Good day, I'm Vincent Saxtetter, and this is the After the Age of Fire channel. This is episode 42, recorded on April 18th, 2026, but it'll be distributed a week later so as to not overlap with episode 41. It'll be distributed on the 25th, Saturday of the third week of the Easter season. The title of this episode is about risk and lack of control as our growth ends. So that I'll be discussing in this episode the fact that we'll have increased risk and reduced control in the coming era after this era of exponential growth comes to an end. This is a prepping channel. It's meant to prepare you and your family line to flourish and thrive and reproduce in the coming era. Right now we're ending an era of doublings. Every 22 years the human race had twice as much of pretty much everything. So each generation had double what its parents had. And by now we have around 60,000 calories total per person per day. That's the average across the whole human race. Around 41,000 of that is from coal, oil, and gas. Another 5,000 is from wind, solar, nuclear, and hydro. So only about a tenth of that. And then there's another 15,000 or so from food, fodder, and wood, things that we grow. Total is 60,000. And after this period of doublings comes to an end, sometime very soon now, we'll come to rest at a little bit lower level of about 30,000 calories, give or take, sometime, in other words, roughly a half of where we are now, or somewhere around where our energy consumption was in 1970. Still much larger than our energy consumption 250 years ago. So a completely different world than 250 years ago. We're not going back to the Stone Age, but a little bit less than we have today. So this episode 42, ends a cycle of 4 episodes which discuss mathematical patterns that could describe the transition from the period of doublings that we're ending into the new era, which will be have an energy supply of around 30,000 calories per person. And so we'll be talking about, we have been talking about those patterns, and the point is that once we have finished with this episode, the patterns, then we'll go into discussing what the world around us is actually doing, the financial indicators and all the other things that are going on around us, and see if we can figure out which pattern we might be in. So the approach here is not predictive. We have made some predictions that will settle down to 30,000 calories per person sometime in the next 100 to 200 years. But I can't predict how we'll get there. Instead, we have to observe and see what we actually seem to be doing. And the reason why we need to think about these patterns is because we're no longer in the very predictable world of the doublings. The doublings of exponential growth happen on a timer, practically speaking, every 22 years. So it's pretty easy to predict what comes next in terms of consumption, but we don't have that timer anymore. We're losing it, and as we come to the limits of our capability to grow anymore. And then we need to think more about what can we say, is there anything we can be confident about. Overall, we can be confident that whatever pattern the world follows over the next 100 or so years, it'll start with exponential growth, because that's what we've been doing for the last 250 years. It'll be a bit like a stunt biker taking off from a ramp. And at some point, the stunt biker will lose contact with the ramp and will be flying through the air in free fall, but at first going up still. Perhaps that's where we are already, still expanding. At some point he'll come to a peak, and then he'll start to come back down. And the question is, on the way back down, is he going to have a smooth landing? Maybe he'll find another ramp that helps him meet the ground smoothly, in an orderly way, or will there be other things going on? So we discussed the sudden transition, where he's up in the air and suddenly he looks down, and like a cartoon character, as soon as he looks down, his bike plummets straight down, no further forward movement. That's not going to happen, at least not because of the availability of coal, oil, and gas. Mines don't and wells don't run out overnight. It might happen if we blow ourselves up or something, that our consumption might suddenly drop, but it won't be because of the availability of resources. So another possibility. So that was episode 39, where we discussed the sudden overnight collapse, which won't happen, at least not because of physical availability. And then in episode 40, we talked about the possibility of having this most smooth, orderly way of transitioning from the growth that we're in now to reaching a peak and then smoothly coming down to 30,000. But it seemed more likely that other patterns may happen, where, for instance, since we've overshot the 30,000 already, we're at 60,000 calories per person. Maybe we'll have an undershoot, and then maybe another overshoot, and then maybe another undershoot. And who knows whether those overshoots and undershoots will eventually come to a steady level around 30,000, or whether we'll just keep on oscillating forever around that 30,000, up, down. And who knows whether it'll be on a schedule, an oscillation lasting 20 years or 50 years, or whether the timing will vary. So there are many different patterns that involve less orderly transitions that are not just a simple peak and then a gradual descent. Then in the previous episode 41, we talked about whether the human race might reorganize to meet the limit, either deliberately, where we would coordinate or compete or interact in some way that produces an overall change in our individual and collective behavior, or another alternative is where we're forced into an overall change in our behavior. Of course, there is a forcing factor. The factor is that there's some limit in our ability to cope with the results of consuming large amounts of energy from any source, of mining that, the risks and the cost, the work, the consequences, and that's a kind of limit. But it has something to do with us, not just with the world around us. And since it has something to do with us, there's some possibility and likelihood that we ourselves will reorganize on the way through this transition in some way, that after the end of these multiplications, individuals and the race as a whole and groups within it, nations, will be acting substantially different than they have been for the last 250 years. That would be a reorganization. And so I discussed, this is not Marxism or some sort of description of what the new world must be like. I will give some recommendations in later episodes of how to prepare for the new world, but this has nothing to do with saying, oh, the politics will be like this or the nations will be arranged like that. No, it's just discussing the possibility that we could be in a process of organizing for some new way of living. And if so, how would you recognize that by looking at indicators in the world around us, say the economy or whatever. So I discussed that and the sort of booms and busts and things that might be a sign of especially if they accelerate, that might be a sign that some critical moment is approaching. So in this episode, it's going to be a pretty brief episode. I just wanted to highlight the lack of control that's coming. We've been in a period of exponential growth, of multiplications year on year, decade after decade, And there's been a sense, well, first of all, of predictability, but also a sense of control that often we tell ourselves that we are doing this, we did it, we are the reason why we've succeeded, we're the reason why our best practices are, by best practices I mean like science and technology, democracy, globalism, free trade, socialism, freedom of press, literacy for everyone, modern medicine, uh, the ways that we operate businesses, the business practices, and you name it. We have thousands of different technologies or soft technologies about how governments and companies and schools and families should be run, and hard technologies like our R&D and our sciences and engineering. Um, and we generally think that if we, or even how our roads are designed, our safety practices, uh, all, we tend to think that we have some control over the outcome of what's coming up. If we make good choices, and so there's constant debate, fighting politics over how to ensure continued growth. Okay, and here I just want to point out um, that none of this will continue to ensure our growth. In fact, it's a given that we will come to a point where we're unable to sustain our multiplications. If you want to, it's abundantly clear, it's absolutely obvious, but if you want to go through all the details of it, you can go through the previous episodes on my channel where I talked about the growth and how much energy we'll be able to get long term from each of the possible energy sources, and why we'll never get more than around 30,000 total from any combination of them. And it's not just energy; other resources are limited. Um, so we can't force this one, and moreover, we can't even tell which pattern will follow on the way from the current era of doublings to the final state where we'll be somewhere around 30,000. We can't tell whether we're going to go through an orderly transition where we just come smoothly to where we just begin decreasing slowly in an orderly way down to 30,000. We can't, or whether there will be some peaks and some valleys, some resurgences, and some crashes along the way. We can't tell ahead of time whether the human race will reorganize itself, or whether or how we'll have to be reorganized by our circumstances. We can't choose this. It's happening. It's happening in a way that we can't force the growth to continue, but neither can we steer our way as we end the growth. It's beyond our control. All we can do is observe and try to judge as astutely as possible what's actually going on, and see, okay, well, this is the pattern we seem to be following right now, and this is the way things seem to be going. Okay, even worse, I'd say it's actually that might actually make it seem like we have, even though I'm saying we have no control, there's an even deeper level where that of lack of control. It's the fact that the future will be a surprise. It always happens that way. That continued change is certain. So that if you arrive at, say, suppose that people imagine that we'll arrive at 1984 type George Orwell world, just as one. I'm just picking a world out of a hat, okay? And suppose you imagine that we'll arrive at that. Well, there's no guarantee that 50 years later we'll still be in that 1984 world. Maybe we'll be in a medieval fiefdom world 50 years, 200 years later, or maybe something else, something that nobody's heard of before. We don't. There's no. It seems there's no guarantee, and certainly even worse, it seems unlikely that we'll ever settle into a steady state. where things are just continue to be stable. We can be certain, that's been the subject of the first 40 episodes or so, we can be certain that growth will end. We'll stop our multiplications. Maybe we're already stopping them right now, and it is certain that we'll have less energy per person, maybe somewhere in the neighborhood of 30,000. But for the rest, what sort of governments we'll have, or the social arrangements and so on, those are beyond our control. In fact, we can't even. There are so many combinations and ways that of arrangements that people could be arranged or could be thinking, or that it's sure that something will be, no matter what sort of world we imagine, no matter how imaginative we are, there will still be at least one thing that's completely different and completely surprising about how the world turns out. And moreover, these, just to emphasize again, the best practices for growth that we think can guarantee our success they just can't succeed. They can't succeed in forcing the continued multiplications. And the people who insist, there are many people who continue to say, well, you do this, and this will give us a way forward. You organize the government this way, or you do this economically, so we'll have continued economic growth, or whatever. These people by now have enough warning signs that they're responsible for living in that delusion and for encouraging the people that they influence in following that delusion. It's a very simple delusion. It's a delusion that I think everyone engages in one way or another. It's sometimes, and some of us all the time, that it's the delusion that we have no limits, that if we're determined, we can continue to grow in whatever way we're determined to grow, and there's no fundamental limit. People who advise other people on the basis of that delusion are responsible for it by now, and they betray their public. The leaders betray their public, and the public that expects their leaders to continue acting as if exponential growth forever were a possible thing. The public also betrays their leaders. I want to discuss several strategies for managing this lack of control. So you can say, okay, you can back up a minute and say, okay, well, I don't have control, but secretly think, okay, well, I'm smart, I can maintain control. Okay, if I just follow a smart strategy. So it's a way of admitting and not admitting at the same time. So one way of doing this is, one strategy of doing this is to bet on all the possibilities that could happen, so all the ways that the world could evolve, so that no matter which way the world evolves, you'll have a winning bet. One of your investments will come out ahead, and will come out so far ahead that you'll be an altogether winner. So you bet on the upside and you bet on the downside. You bet on if there are other possibilities besides up and down, you bet on those too. This sort of trying to figure out how to take a combination of bets so that you always win, this strategy can't work, okay? Because the rules of the game are changing. We've been in a world of doublings for 250 years, and by now every detail of our personal lives and our community lives and our national and international affairs is based on living in a world of doublings, and every bit of that will change. It'll all be turned upside down, and in the games that we play, the likelihoods of things happening 200 years from now will be played with different dice than we're playing with now. The rules of the game will be different. because we'll no longer be in the period of doublings and we'll no longer be organized around that. So we're in a situation where the changes that are coming up are so profound that straddling the fence can't work. It'll just end in disaster. We're in a do or die situation. You have to choose an option and do the best with that choice. You can't bet on 100 things because the probabilities will all be wrong, and certainly something's going to come up that you know there will be some, you know, there's the phrase of something going sideways, you know, in a way that nobody foresaw, right? The unknown unknown, and that'll kill you. It's guaranteed to kill you during this upcoming transition. The other two strategies, besides betting on all possibilities, there are two other strategies that involve exercising power. And so one way is just to try to control the outcome is by making global efforts for universal compliance to get something done. Okay, so for instance, to prevent a pandemic by coordinating all 8 billion inhabitants of this globe and all medical services, all governments, all airlines, and every other detail to make sure that the pandemic doesn't spread and is controlled. So that's just an exercise of raw power, global power over every individual's life. It's an immense thing. Okay, it's just gargantuan. Or another way to exercise global power is through economic stimulus efforts. So you just say, I'm going to solve this problem by releasing enormous amounts of money, maybe money that I just printed. Okay, but the point of an end to growth, of a limit to our resource consumption, is that it's a real limit. It's not something you can power your way through. If we could power our way through it, then it wouldn't be a limit. So these global efforts, we are trying them, and we continue, and we have been, and we continue to try them, and I'll discuss some of them in the coming episodes. But none of them are equal to the task of making ourselves multiply by 2 and 2 again and 2 again. You need something more subtle, not for guaranteeing growth, but trying to get through it at least. It won't, insisting on absolute control just won't. That your tools will splinter in your hands. Another way to exercise power, this is the third strategy, is for groups to isolate themselves from other groups and to work for their own personal success, their own group success, and just forcing other people to disengage and not interacting with those other people, or interacting with them only on their own terms, or for a group to try to succeed at the expense of others. So to use others' resources to maintain and improve their quality of life, while making other people work and sacrifice for themselves. And that's again a power-based option where a particular group is not trying to power the whole human race through continued growth. It's trying to continue its own growth. Of course, one obvious thing is if a particular group were to continue multiplying every 22 years, sooner or later it would be using as much resources as the whole human race does today. So it will encounter its limit sooner or later. But I think, in fact, it's very clear that it will meet its limit much earlier than that. None of these strategies, I mentioned 3 strategies for trying to maintain control. The one where you bet on all possibilities, the one where you exercise global control, and a third one where groups isolate or subjugate. None of these will work for us or for individuals because the reorganization that's coming up, whether it's forced on us or whether we do it ourselves, whether it's something that accelerates to a critical moment or it's just something that we just exit the multiplications. In any case, we'll be living in a different way. So I was saying that I was talking about why these strategies won't work, the three strategies that are listed, and then I was interrupted, so I'll say again, start in again. The point is that this reorganization, whether it's one that acts like it's preparing for a critical moment, or just we transition out of the multiplications and into something else, every detail of our lives will change along the way, in individual lives, collective lives, global, and therefore, since our lives are built around the multiplications and their consequences, and all our best practices, our ways of organizing our governments and our education and our technology are oriented towards trying to make those multiplications continue, everything will change. And so in particular, power-based strategies won't work. They make you less able to adapt rapidly and appropriately because you're focused so much on trying to exert power, trying to maintain power, that you may not notice something that's important until it's too late, and you may not adjust. In fact, people who are bent on maintaining and exerting power tend to live in more luxury than they might, and tend to live in a way that's insulated and maybe less alert and than they might. And in the coming transition, it'll be very important to be as alert as possible, or if possible more alert than possible, and more adaptable, more ready to see things as they're happening, and more able to adjust to it. If you don't notice things until it's too late, if you're unable to adjust to them, or you may even overreact once you do notice something, and make something worse. This is the way that erratic behavior happens. That like the sequences of bull and bear markets. It's overcompensation, or the way a drunk driver drives down the road. He overcompensates. He notices he's too far to the left, so he swerves to the right. Then he notices he's too far to the right, and he swerves to the left. It doesn't work very well. It makes things worse, and it certainly doesn't help you get through something. So power-based strategies make you more erratic, they make you more brittle, and they tend to lead to sudden failure. In fact, failure that needn't have been sudden, but because you're insisting on power, it comes as a surprise. And you seem like you're okay until you're not. They make unpredictability worse. I want to emphasize again, this whole episode is about having no control at all of what's coming, except of our own responses and of ourselves. So this is a moment to try to cultivate self-discipline, discipline of your mind, discipline of your heart, discipline of your body, so that you're ready for whatever comes. So there are three strategies that I mentioned that won't allow you to maintain control. Two of them were power-based strategies. Another one was based on betting on all the possibilities, which actually requires a degree of power. It means that you have to have some extra resources ready so you can bet on things. Okay, none of them will work. The better approach is to take our challenges as they come, to live through things rather than trying to overcome them, to to figure out how to live with something, how to adjust, how to make the best of it, rather than making it go away. So, because, and part of the reason why is that we grow in strength through our challenges. If you manage to live with and to find a way of living through a particular challenge, you'll be more resilient and more alert and more able to take the next one as it comes. So I expect that we'll have many challenges, and one after, and many at the same time, one after another, and the people who choose to take those challenges as they come, and to do the best with them that they can, will be more prepared and more able to take the next one and the next one, and more able to choose where to focus their efforts right now. We'll have many things on our hands all at once, and we'll have to choose what to think about and what to handle and what to let go, and instead of insisting on continuing things according to our ideas. So we must decide and protect things and act as well as we can to address our circumstances, but we have to choose among the possibilities that the real world offers us. We can't just insist on the possibilities that we think we should have. We won't have the possibilities that we think we should have. In particular, we won't have the possibility of continued multiplications. But many other possibilities that we assume are right, or are the way that things should be if we're successful, just won't be available to us, and we'll have to choose among other ones. So we choose among the best, among the ones that we're offered, and we try to discern which one is the best, and we take that and we work in that direction. I think that's, and if we do that, if we live in the real world, if we take the possibilities that we're offered, we'll get stronger and things will go. I firmly believe that there is a way to flourish and thrive and reproduce if you stay alert and you take the world as it is. If you insist on the world continuing to be some other way that it's not, if you don't notice that the world isn't the way you think it is, then that will end in disaster. So lack of control is not the same as disaster. You do have some control over your own actions and how you react to the world around you, whether you're willing to even notice the world as it is. And if you do accept the world as it is, and if you do exercise a kind of self-control and preparedness, you can really do well, but it just won't be the world that we prescribe for ourselves today. So that ends my discussion for the moment about how to handle risk and lack of control. In the next episodes, so overall, this has been discussing, this fourth episode was discussing the overall pattern of a world that's out of control, that follows its own patterns, and that we have to adjust to as it comes. In the next episodes, we'll be looking at the world as it is and trying to see how it matches the patterns that we've discussed over the last 4 episodes, and see where we are in the process of the end of growth, how to recognize what's going on. So with that, I thank you for your attention. If you know anybody who's interested in this content, please refer them to this channel, and please keep coming back. Have a wonderful week.